After I left the motel, I stopped trusting clocks. Digital ones felt too precise. Analog ones felt like they were hiding something. I relied on my body instead. It always knew when the moment was approaching. I tried to stay busy. Long drives, crowded places, noise. But the closer the time got, the quieter everything felt, as if the world itself was stepping aside. The first night it happened again, I wasn't alone.
The apartment belonged to a friend. Thin walls, old building, familiar sounds. I told myself that mattered. At 3:14 a.m., I was awake, sitting on the couch, staring at a muted television screen that reflected my own face back at me, slightly distorted, slightly delayed.
When 3:17 arrived, the apartment reacted differently than the house had. No cold, no pressure, just a sound, soft, almost polite, coming from the kitchen. A drawer being opened halfway, then stopped. I didn't move, I didn't breathe, because this time, whatever was there wasn't learning, it already knew.
The apartment smelled faintly of cleaning products and old furniture, the kind of neutral scent meant to suggest safety, but safety felt performative now. Alan noticed how every place tried to convince him it was normal, unaware of the hour it was about to face. The walls seemed thinner as the night progressed, not physically, but attentively.
I stayed on the couch until the sky outside the window shifted from black to a diluted gray. Nothing else happened. No footsteps, no movement. Just that drawer, left half open, like a suggestion rather than a threat. In the morning, I asked my friend if he had gone to the kitchen during the night. He laughed, said he slept through everything, said he never wakes up before his alarm. That's when I noticed the pattern. The hour wasn't universal, it was selective. I started paying attention to people around me, who yawned too often, who rubbed their eyes like they hadn't slept, who checked the time instinctively as if expecting something. At a cafe later that day, a woman dropped her cup when her phone screen lit up. I saw the time reflected briefly on the table. 3:17 a.m. from the night before.
He called me after that. His voice was calm, too calm. That's how I knew something had shifted. He told me about the woman, about the way she froze for a second before pretending nothing had happened. I didn't tell him I'd been noticing it too. Strangers in elevators, a man at a bus stop staring at the streetlight like it had betrayed him, online posts that vanished hours later, questions asked without context. Does anyone else wake up at the same time every night? I saved screenshots. I shouldn't have.
Once you notice the pattern, it notices you back. I don't know how else to describe it. It wasn't about the hour anymore. It was about awareness. The people who woke up were different afterward. Quieter, distracted, like they were listening to something the rest of the world couldn't hear. I started mapping it out. Names, places, times. The overlap was small, but undeniable. And one detail kept repeating. No one woke up alone forever.
That sentence sat with me longer than it should have, because by then, I was waking up too. Not always at 3:17, sometimes a minute before, sometimes after, but close enough to feel intentional. The night I finally said it out loud, the room felt smaller. Alan, I think it's spreading. The city at night no longer felt anonymous. Streetlights flickered with intention, casting pools of light that seemed too precisely placed. Even familiar streets carried a subtle tension, like they were waiting for something to pass through them. Alan noticed how often people checked their phones now, not for messages, but for reassurance.
I started testing a theory. Nothing dangerous at first. I stayed awake on purpose, Watched the clock approach the hour instead of being surprised by it. At 3:15, my chest tightened. At 3:16, the room felt slightly misaligned, like furniture had shifted when I wasn't looking. At 3:17, nothing happened. That was the mistake. I thought control meant immunity. I thought awareness was enough. The reaction came later, delayed, subtle. I lost track of time for a moment, maybe seconds, maybe longer. When I looked back at the clock, it was 3:19, and the silence in the room felt offended.
He told me that part like it was a victory. I heard it differently. Patterns don't like being challenged. They don't break, they adapt. That night, I decided to do something I hadn't told him about. I searched for others. Not openly, quietly. Old forums, abandoned comment sections, archived threads where the last replies were years old. I didn't search for the hour, I searched for the feeling. People describing the same restlessness, the same pressure, the same certainty that something had noticed them back. One message stood out: no date, no username. If you try to face it directly, it will wait. If you ignore it, it will move closer.
The first rule became clear that morning, though I didn't want to accept it. You don't decide when the hour ends. The hour decides when you're finished. That was when I realized the drawer in the kitchen hadn't been left open as a warning. It was an invitation.
I didn't tell Alan about the message I found. Some information feels dangerous just by existing. I closed my laptop and sat in the dark longer than I meant to. When I finally checked the time, my phone screen glowed softly in my hand. 3:16 a.m. I didn't blink. The night Maria crossed the line, nothing dramatic happened at first. No sound, no movement, just a shift, so subtle it could be mistaken for imagination. The room felt acknowledged, like a space that had been empty was now correctly occupied. I stayed awake past the hour. I didn't force myself, I simply didn't sleep. The difference mattered. When 3:17 passed, there was no relief, only the feeling that something had taken note of my patience. I understood then that the hour wasn't a moment, it was a window. I felt it open and close without sound. The next day, I started noticing changes in how people spoke to me. Hesitations, half-finished sentences, as if they were deciding whether I was safe to talk to. One coworker asked, out of nowhere, if I ever woke up at the same time every night. When I didn't answer immediately, she nodded, like she already knew.
Maria's silence worried me more than her fear ever had. She was calmer now, focused. That kind of calm doesn't come from peace, it comes from alignment. I realized something else, too. The people affected by 3:17 didn't seek each other out randomly. The hour wasn't spreading like a virus. It was connecting like a network. Shared attention, shared anticipation. People who noticed stayed. People who stayed were remembered. I thought of Thomas Hale, the notebook, the repetition. He hadn't been writing to survive. He had been writing to anchor himself, proof that he was still distinct. And now I wondered how many names had been written before mine.
That night, I dreamed without images, just structure, corridors folding into themselves, doors that led back to the same room, and a presence that didn't chase, didn't threaten, only waited for recognition. When I woke up, my phone was in my hand, open to a blank note. The cursor blinked once. I hadn't typed anything yet, but it felt impatient. The city felt different after that. Not hostile, not welcoming, just aware. Alan noticed how often people paused mid-step, mid-thought, like they were briefly checking in with something invisible before continuing. The hour had stopped being personal. It was communal now.
Once you recognize the pattern, you start wondering how many others are listening too. That's when I understood why stories like this are rarely told openly. Not because they're unbelievable, but because attention feeds them. If you're listening to this and something feels familiar, take a moment now. Like the story, subscribe, not out of habit, but awareness. It helps keep these accounts from disappearing the way others have.
I felt that sentence settle in me when he said it, like it belonged there. The note on my phone was no longer blank. One sentence had appeared, clean and deliberate. Don't describe it. That's how it stays. I didn't remember typing it, but I knew it was meant for me. From that night on, the dreams stopped being symbolic. They became instructional. Where to stand, where not to look, when silence mattered more than movement. The presence wasn't teaching me out of kindness, it was preparing me.
That was when I realized Maria and I weren't experiencing the same thing anymore. I was observing the pattern. She was inside it. The calls became shorter. Her voice steadier, less human somehow. Not cold, just precise. Like someone who had learned the correct way to exist in a place that didn't forgive mistakes. And then she said something that confirmed what I had been avoiding.
Alan, I don't think we're meant to leave this one.
After that call, Maria stopped answering at night. Messages still went through during the day, short, practical, stripped of anything emotional. She never mentioned the hour again. She didn't have to. I could hear it in what she no longer said. I began to understand something I wish I hadn't. The pattern didn't take everyone the same way. Some people were pulled, others were absorbed. Maria hadn't been overwhelmed. She had been accepted. The calm in her voice wasn't resistance, it was alignment. I tried to warn her. I told her what happened to Thomas Hale, about the notebook, about the way the house didn't imprison him, but reshaped him until staying felt logical. She listened without interrupting, then said something that still wakes me up before the hour. She said Thomas hadn't failed. He had completed the process. That was the last time we spoke before 3:17. The next night, I stayed awake again, not to challenge it, to observe it properly this time. When the hour arrived, the room didn't change, but I did. My thoughts slowed, organized themselves around a single question I hadn't asked before. Who is still needed? I realized then that the network wasn't growing randomly. It was thinning. People disappeared from forums, posts stopped mid-sentence, accounts went silent, not because they were gone, but because they no longer needed to ask. They had learned where to listen. At 3:18, my phone vibrated once. A message from Maria. Just coordinates. No explanation. I didn't go. That choice still echoes, because the following morning, the coordinates were gone. The message thread empty, as if it had never existed. But the hour remembered. It always does. Now, when 3:17 approaches, I feel something like anticipation, mixed with guilt. I know the pattern is still active, still connecting, still waiting for attention. And I know this isn't a warning, it's documentation.